Something tells me that Insomniac's Venom and Ultimate Venom would get along just fine. But regardless, welcome back true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans to another very interesting Marvel Spider-Man 2 related video. And now that I finally have some free time away from SFSU, I can once again dive back into making a plethora of videos relating to this incredibly exciting game. And while we will receive even more news relating to this game sooner rather than later, things have been a bit dry recently ever since the conclusion of San Diego Comic-Con. And despite us having to wait for our next official update for Marvel Spider-Man 2, that doesn't mean the hype for the game has died down by any means. Especially when taking today's topic into consideration, where we are going to be fully discussing exactly why Venom must be playable in Marvel Spider-Man 2 one way or another. Now, I have already gone at extensive length to thoroughly analyze all the multitude of teases that we have received directly from Insomniac games themselves, which do heavily indicate the possibility that Venom in some way, shape, or form will be a playable character in Marvel Spider-Man 2. And definitely make sure to check out those 101 videos if you haven't already. But given everything that we now currently know about Marvel Spider-Man 2, and seeing how massive of a role the symbiote, Black Suit Spider-Man, and Venom are going to play within the narrative of this game's story, I thought it would be a good time to once again revisit this topic in order to explain why having Venom being a playable character would not only be a major highlight for the gameplay, but would also elevate the overall narrative of Marvel Spider-Man 2 to even greater heights. And if Insomniac ends up not doing this within Marvel Spider-Man 2, then I for one personally think that it is going to be a massively missed opportunity. So if you're someone like me who desperately wants Venom to be playable within Marvel Spider-Man 2, then definitely be sure to flip that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future Marvel Spider-Man 2 content. Now for starters, one of the biggest drawing points of Marvel Spider-Man 2, which we have heard Insomniac iterate several times at this point, mainly coming from the creative director of the game himself, of Brian Intihar, is knowing that there are two individual Spider-Men that you can play as within this game. Of course, relating to Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And even though this hasn't been officially confirmed yet, the recent story trailer that we did receive for the game does seem to tease the potential return of the Mary Jane missions that we initially saw in Spider-Man PS4. Which would also mean that just like Spider-Man PS4 is that we would end up having a total of 3 playable characters. Mainly with Peter Parker and Miles Morales being the highlight, since we will most likely be able to play as them both in and out of their Spider-Man suits, and of course MJ, who would serve to provide as a bit more of a different narrative path compared to Peter and Miles, while also focusing more on heavily grounded stealth in comparison to playing as Spider-Man. And while I'm well aware that the majority of people may have not been entirely fond of the MJ sequences in Spider-Man PS4, I personally think that they did a good job with splicing up the gameplay mechanics in order to make things feel fresh. Especially taking some of the more unique missions into consideration, like the Grand Central Terminal mission with MJ, as well as the Rhino mission with Miles Morales, both of which really made the player think on their toes. But now moving back to the official sequel of Marvel Spider-Man 2, how do all these missions directly relate to a playable Venom? And frankly, I think the answer speaks for itself. Introducing the black suit within Marvel Spider-Man 2 is going to give a completely brand new feel to the game's core combat system, which is pretty much going to make it feel like a revival of the cancelled Spider-Man Web of Shadows sequel that we never received. And allowing the player to fully let loose as Black Suit Spider-Man is easily going to be one of, if not the greatest aspects about this game in its entirety. However, merely playing as only Black Suit Spider-Man isn't anything new, considering that we've already seen the symbiote several times over in previous Spider-Man games like that of the Spider-Man 3 movie tie-in game, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, and the last Spider-Man game to feature the black suit was Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, all of which are great in their own right. And while I am beyond hyped to once again play as Black Suit Spider-Man in Marvel Spider-Man 2, there's only been one major standalone open-world Spider-Man game that has fully allowed the player to completely embrace the dark side. And of course, I'm talking about the one and only Ultimate Spider-Man.
Well, just another day in the life.
Now granted, we have been able to play as Venom in a multitude of Marvel games since Ultimate Spider-Man, like that of the Lego games, Ultimate Alliance, Midnight Suns, and even the forever iconic Spider-Man Friend or Foe.
Come on, who's your daddy?
You are.
So playing as Venom isn't really anything new either, but the only game that has actually been able to fully flesh out Venom as a completely detailed character in the narrative of the story, as well as giving him his own unique moveset from Spider-Man and a different form of traversal altogether, was first made possible all the way back in 2005 thanks to Ultimate Spider-Man. But the most important aspect about Venom's playability within that game, besides having a multitude of awesome symbiote powers and just destroying waves of enemies like it's nothing, is actually all in thanks to the story that the Ultimate Spider-Man game was telling, which, if you know, is pretty much a direct continuation from the Venom arc that we saw in the original Ultimate Spider-Man comics. And if you know me, that story in and of itself is one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man stories. So playing through Ultimate Spider-Man in its entirety, both as Spider-Man and Venom, was pretty much a dream come true for me when I first played it as a kid. But to reiterate, it's mainly in service to the story that Venom was playable in the first place, given how big of a role that Venom, the symbiote, and mainly Eddie Brock play within the core campaign. And the reason why I say all of this is because the same exact situation is happening here once again for Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Insomniac has already fully developed a completely symbiote-dedicated moveset for Black Suit Spider-Man, and as Brian Idhar and Jacinda Chu have already previously stated in a PlayStation blog, is that Venom's main abilities are going to be very familiar for Spider-Man fans, while also expanding upon the core attributes that make Venom Venom, such as the case of his insane strength, his tendril abilities, and more. So while I have no doubt that making Venom a playable character would be insanely fun to control, I also think that it would be an immensely critical plot point to actually go through as the player during the game's story. We're still not officially 100% sure who exactly is going to be Venom's host in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Even though the recent story trailer is wanting to make us think that Harry is Venom's host, there could always be the last minute psych out that it turns out that Norman ends up being Venom, or like what we previously speculated is that it is actually Peter all along, and that him continually wearing the black suit will make him end up evolving into Venom and pretty much wreak utter havoc throughout some point of the story. For me personally, as a diehard Spider-Man fan, I've always viewed Venom as Peter's arch nemesis, and that Spider-Man and Venom themselves are pretty much two sides of the same coin. Mainly because without Peter actually wearing the symbiote in the first place, Venom wouldn't even exist at all, which pretty much makes Venom as a character Spider-Man's greatest failure. And Venom continuously reminds Peter of that every chance he gets by trying to kill him and the ones closest to him. So if at some point of Marvel's Spider-Man 2's story, we're actually able to see that portion of the narrative take place by allowing the player to control Venom at that point in time, would not only be a dream come true for diehard Venom fans, but it would also make the main narrative of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 that much more impactful to the players at large. Especially if it turns out that Harry Osborn is Venom, then it's going to be one hell of an emotional roller coaster to take back control of Peter and Miles in order to finish off Venom completely. We already know full well that Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is going to be an absolutely amazing game, but having Venom be a playable character, if only for a short sequence within the game, would simply make the final experience that much better. But we're just gonna have to keep our fingers crossed to see exactly what Insomniac decides to do by the time October 20th rolls around. And with all that said, everybody, that's the video I have for all you today, and please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think of the possibility of Venom being playable in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and would you want him to be playable either in a small set piece during the game's story, or be a completely traversable character within the open world like what we saw in Ultimate Spider-Man? Let me know what you think, be sure to leave a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and for more Marvel Spider-Man 2 videos like this in the future. Thank you all so much for watching, stay spectacular Spidey fans, and until next time, peace out.